Hello and welcome to Scan TV's program called Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, and our show provides caregivers with information and resources for caregiving, including topics such as legal issues, health insurance, physical wellness, nutrition, and other really helpful topics. I am so happy to introduce you to our first guest today, who is financial planner Anthony Canderozzi. Welcome, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So, first question, tell me about Creative Financial Strategies. What is your company all about?
So Creative Financial Strategies is a financial planning firm it's had a presence here in the Jersey Shore community since about 1955. We've grown over those years to be about 170 advisors throughout the state with 4 main offices. The largest one here in Wall, New Jersey.
Wow, that's a big firm. That's a very large firm. So for people who are not familiar with this world, what is a financial planner? What is their role in people's lives? It seems obvious, but what do they do?
It's funny. I think the definition of financial planner is like the definition of love. It means different things to different people. But basically, I'll kind of parallel it to a doctor's appointment. You go to a doctor, you tell him why you're there. He might run some tests and then come back and tell you where he sees some red flags or things that you should focus on. That's what a financial planner does. You'll go there and say what your concerns are, what you're trying to achieve, and basically map out a game plan to say that you're on the right path, you're going to be successful, or here are a couple of changes that you might want to make to get there safely and more efficiently.
I think one of the things that people think of, one of the thoughts about financial planners is that it's only for really wealthy people. For ordinary working people, it's out of their range. Is that true, or what's your thought on that?
No, I think it's a roadmap, and just like anyone else taking a trip, everyone kind of goes through the same steps. If I need to get from point A to point B, and I need to have certain things with me, we all go through the same process. It's the same thing with financial planning. I think people think that the common misconception is that people just think that they need to have a lot of money to invest to involve a financial planner. And financial planning is a process more than anything, and it's just going through that diagnosis and finding out that this person is applying the best advice for their situation in the most suitable manner.
And so when somebody's thinking about reaching out to a financial planner, what are the qualifications? Going back to your doctor analogy, so you look at what medical school, where they did their residency. How do people know, and how can they trust a financial planner?
So it's always best to get referred, and the best referrals come through your other your other professional advisors, like your attorney or your accountant. But there are a couple of places where you could look into your financial planner. So there are 2 main schools that educate people for professional designations, and one is the American College out of Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, and they will grant, well, you have to earn them, Chartered Financial Consulting designations, which is what I have, CLU designation, a bunch of other designations, and they also participate in the CFP program now. The second school is the College for Financial Planning out of Denver, Colorado, and that's the more common one known in the marketplace, which is a certified financial planner. Additionally, to find out whether or not you're dealing with the right person, kind of what's the Better Business Bureau, there's a few places you could go on the internet to find out about the person that you're dealing with. And one is to do a broker check with the securities regulators. You could go on to finra.org, FINRA.org, and then click broker check and put the person's name in and find out what their background is, whether or not they've had any complaints. If they had complaints, whether or not there were any fines, suspensions, or that type of thing. And then in the state of New Jersey, you could go to New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance. So it's njdobi.gov. Also, if you go to my website, which is planwithanthony.com, there's a link right on the main page that will take you to the broker check. Oh. And that will give you a little bit of a history of who you're dealing with.
Oh, that's great information. I don't think most people know that. I don't think that's really publicized a lot, or I'm in this world and I never heard it. So that's really, really helpful information. So when we're talking to caregivers and dealing with their issues, something that I read was the 40-70 rule. So that means that when somebody's 40 years old, generally their parents are around 70 years old, and that's really the time to start talking to parents about it. But it's a really difficult conversation for most people to have. I shared with you before, my father was very private about this. He never told us anything, and he didn't want to talk about it. It was none of our business. And then after he passed away, we had no idea what was happening, and it was very difficult. Do you have advice for people how to talk to their parents or even a spouse that might be private about it? How do you counsel people to have this conversation?
Well, it's a tough conversation because when you approach your parents about protecting themselves and their assets, what they hear is that you want to talk to them about your inheritance. So it isn't always well received, but it's very important. Sometimes if you could get them to a financial workshop where a planner like myself might be giving a workshop and kind of point out what some of the problems are, or have them talk to your financial planner and let them broach the topic with them, or one of their attorney or their accountant. A lot of people just don't like to talk about it, but it's so important to have them be organized, because I see people who find assets years after mom or dad passed. And it's important, as a financial planner, there's a few places that I know that I could go to. Did mom or dad have a life insurance policy? I think they did, I don't know. Well, what are you going to do? Call all 1,100 or 1,300 life insurance companies? Or are you going to go to one place where you could put your information and it's shared with all the, all of the companies? So that's a value that, getting the right resources to point you in that right direction to help you, and help you stay organized.
Yeah, that's so important, because after somebody dies, when you're trying to make those phone calls to find out things, even if you know they had an insurance company, they don't know you from a hole in a wall.
Yeah.
You weren't on the policy, you were never mentioned, so they don't want to give you information, and you're going through grief. And so it's such a...
And they're giving you grief.
And they're giving you grief. And it's such a painful process to have to deal with all that stuff afterwards. So you have a process to keep everything sort of in one place. You collect that information so a family member knows, okay, I could call Anthony and Anthony knows that stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, there's two things. So first of all, we always encourage our clients to communicate to their children that call us first. We know where everything is and we know what to do. And the other thing is, you might have heard some rules like don't make any major decisions within the first year of someone passing. That's golden, that rule. So why don't you make that decision now while both people are here? And you could do that through proper planning so that when the time comes, you're not rush planning. You've deliberately planned years in advance, knowing what you would have to do at the time. And so that's one thing, is make sure that's communicated that we have the information. The other thing that us and other financial planners out there do is we provide a secure personal web page for our clients where all of their assets, whether they're with us or not, feed into this personalized web page, and everything is there, and it updates every 24 hours. So you know where everything is. But additionally, there's a digital vault. So now important documents like their passport, birth certificate, all of their legal documents, the will, the living will, the healthcare proxy, it's all there. And just think about the last time you went on vacation. Did you pack the healthcare proxy or the living will? But people sometimes get sick on vacation, and we're living in a world with HIPAA rules where you could say to the doctor when he comes out of the OR, "How's my husband doing?" And he'll say, "I can't tell you. I don't have the proper authorization." Right. So having this digital vault keeps those documents only as far as the internet is from you.
Wow. Even thinking about the hurricanes and fires and natural disasters and things like that, having that reside somewhere other than in a little closet or under the bed is probably so helpful
Sure.
for people to have that security to know that their stuff. So is it almost like HIPAA? Like when you work with a parent, do you get a list of their children that you're allowed to talk to then?
Oh, yeah, we would never. The first time I talk to someone about a client's personal information is when I'm out of business. You know, so that'll put me right out of business. We always get permission. We encourage family meetings. And the information that we will deliver at that meeting is really driven by how much information the parents want to share. So they might want to say that they have these 5 accounts, but they might not want to share what the amount is.
So at least there's a conversation that somebody's talking about that conversation. It really is a gift that a parents can give to their children to let them in on this world, not for inheritance or anything, just so that they're aware of it. Most of the parents that you deal with, do they let their children in, or is it more like, no, I don't want anybody to know?
Most of them that are responsible about planning do. But there will be different levels of how much information they want to share. The important thing seems to be that I want to let everyone know that we were fair with everyone. No one's being left out of the will and that type of stuff.
Right. So somebody writes a will, they do that through their lawyer, and then the lawyer sends you the will to upload in your system. Is that how it works?
So typically, if the client is working with us, we'll coordinate those meetings with the attorney so that we could let the attorney have a good amount of information about that client up front so they know exactly who they're dealing with. And when the wills are drafted, we review them. We have our attorneys review them to dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure that everything is consistent with what the client's wishes are. And then we will take the executed documents, once they've been executed, digitally scan them and upload them to the digital vault for them on that website.
And then they have access to it at any time or anything.
Sure.
So this is really important, I guess, if people are caring for somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, to do this early while that person can have input and sign the paperwork that they need to sign.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of that where people, like, somebody's diagnosed and now all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I got to get this into control?
Unfortunately, most of the planning that people do is in the 11th hour.
Right.
Is that rush planning.
Right.
And it's never too late.
Okay, I was wondering about that. Is there a point where that's it?
I can't say that there's always something that you could do to better the situation financially, but to be better prepared, to be better organized, to know where everything is, you still have time to help things flow seamlessly when something happens.
And do you ever deal with guardianships if somebody does have Alzheimer's? Do you get involved with that, or that's just the
We
lawyer?
don't know. We don't do the guardianships, but we're involved in the conversations behind the scenes, and especially when someone passes, we're usually involved in a coaching capacity with the executors, because usually it's the adult child who is the executor, and it's the first time they've done that, and it might be several hundred times that we've been through it.
Right.
So it's easy for us to walk them through it and guide them through it and hold their hand. A lot of people think they automatically have to go to an attorney, and attorneys are absolutely necessary, but there's a lot of work that they could do themselves and save thousands of dollars.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you. We're going to turn it over to a commercial break now, and we are going to be right back with Anthony, so stay tuned.
You probably already know that rehabilitation is a must for successful recovery from surgery, injury, or serious illness. What you may not know is that you're free to choose where you go for rehab. In Monmouth and Ocean County, the compelling choice is Care One. Where you choose to go for rehab matters, and with Care One, you have 4 convenient locations to choose from in Monmouth and Ocean counties. Care One at Jackson, Care One at Wall, Care One at Homedale, and Care One at King James in the Atlantic Highlands. At Care One, you'll work with a team of experts to develop a plan based on your needs and goals. You'll have the full support of caring, compassionate physicians, RNs, licensed therapists, and nutritionists dedicated to helping you recover successfully without setbacks at a pace that makes you comfortable and successful in meeting your rehabilitation goals. Once you take the first step with us, you'll never look back. Call 877-99-CARE-1 today and come for a tour.
Welcome back to Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, and I am thrilled to be joined today by financial planner Anthony Canderozzi. So, Anthony, I wanted to ask you, in this age, everything's on the internet. People think that they could do everything by themselves, and there's so much knowledge out there. What is the advantage of actually having a financial planner and going to a financial planner? What's the advantages of that?
That's a great question. It is actually what we refer to as information overload nowadays. You know, if you did something simple like typed in retirement into Google, did a Google search, you're going to come up with tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of hits. And, you know, I heard a study that they said it would take you 30 years to get through all of that information. So the value is that we're a filter, you know, and think about it, you know, is everything on the internet accurate, and is it accurate for you? And everyone has a different situation. So how much of what I'm viewing on the internet is good, solid information, and how much of it is a commercial to ultimately sell something else? So that's a great question.
So it's just, you have the knowledge, you could discuss something, it's a trusted source, so it just makes sense to have somebody to go to.
Sure.
And so do you see people, what are some of the mistakes that you see when people try to manage things by themselves or wait too long? What's some real life examples of how people get in trouble?
So I think there are a couple of mistakes. One mistake is that what you said, people might want to do it themselves. And I think that's when you're dealing with the care of a loved one or your assets that you've taken a lifetime to accumulate, you want to be a little bit more careful than that. So who's responsible at the end of the day if you made a mistake? You are. I would rather be able to point my finger at a professional like myself, an attorney, an accountant, and know that I'm in good hands. And if they made a mistake, it's on them, and they could fix it. Mm-hmm. So that's a big thing. Is that, you know, let's make sure that we get good advice. And another one is I see a lot of this what I call backdoor planning. Oh, mom got sick. What do? We panic, and we better get the house out of her name before she gets sick and has to go into a nursing home, and we lose it. And the problem with that is, so now you take the house, you put it in the son's name, let's say. Well, now is it exposed to the son's maybe potential divorcing spouse, his creditors, his predators, God forbid he gets in a car accident and kills someone. So now you took an asset that you needed that was safe and secure, and now it's subject to his liabilities. That's one problem. But the bigger problem there is when you give an asset while you're alive, you're giving it with your cost basis, and a lot of people don't think about this. So, you know, my grandmother bought a house in the early 70s in Brooklyn for about $12,000, and then when she finally sold it for about $700,000. And you know, if she gave that house to us when she was alive, we would have to pay taxes on the difference between her cost basis, what she paid for it, and what it finally sold for. But if you inherit that property when someone passes, you get a stepped up cost basis. So the date of death value is what you receive it at. So you would receive it at the 700, sell it at 700, and pay zero in taxes because there was no gain. So that's a mistake that people make, and they do this to try and beat the nursing home, and realize if mom is that sick and you're panicking now, that asset is still considered hers for Medicaid rules for another 5 years. Right. So it's important to get good advice.
Yeah. I think what happens is we're caregivers, if somebody's getting sick, everybody panics about how much it's going to cost. Everybody panics about aides are $20 an hour, and there's minimums, and going into assisted living costs this much a month, and going into a nursing home. Do you meet with people and say, okay, this is where you are, you have enough, or don't worry about it, or you're okay, or is that one of the things that you do?
I think for the most part, people are what I refer to as unconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's important to sit down with someone, and one of the first things we do is we run a cash flow, looking at what their assets are, what their income is, what their current expenses are, and what the potential expenses could grow to, and stress test all of that to see if financially they're going to be okay or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, then let's try and figure out where could we get better resources, or where could we find inefficiencies in what you have to reduce some of your expenses to increase the amount of money that you have to spend. It's very important.
Yeah. Do you have sort of ballpark figures? So, okay, my mother is 85. She was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. If she's going to live till 95, then you're going to need this much. Do you forecast that as far as, okay, let's say in 5 years she's going to need aids. In 7 years she's going to need an assisted living. So you're going to need over the next 10 years $100,000. I'm just making this up as I go along. But is that one of the things that you do? You tell people, like, you should plan on spending this much money?
Oh yeah, we will draw from what not only, forget about the national numbers because they're low compared to here on the East Coast. New Jersey is much higher, but if you look at a full service nursing home, if someone needed that, it's over $110,000 a year in this area. So it's important to see where is that money coming from and who's going to cover it. You know, is it covered by Medicare? Is it not covered by Medicare? If so,
Right.
how much? How do I qualify? So all of these things are questions that they could have answered with a financial planner,
Right.
coordinate with an attorney, and it's important to have that information. But we'll do those projections, and we have people who will be specific, like you said, will project it this way for me. You know, let's see if we can try and keep them at home for a while, and maybe I'm bringing in an aide, you know, once or twice a week to give us some relief. And then we'll talk to them about resources like Caregivers. You know, so great programs that could give caregivers some relief. And also, you know, take some work off of their plate.
Right. And do financial advisors specialize in different areas? Like there's real estate lawyers, there's elder lawyers. Is there?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, there is
Yeah,
specialties?
and that's, you know, I should have said that when you asked about our firm. One of the greatest things about our firm is that because we have so many advisors and so much experience, there are people who specialize in all different areas. Some big areas that people focus on are obviously elder care and estate planning, or what we call wealth transfer planning now. Because a lot of people think when they hear estate planning, they just think about estate taxes, which isn't an issue for most people in New Jersey now. But another big focus is special needs planning. You know, Alzheimer's is a big deal in New Jersey, across the country. So there's a special needs focus. We've got people who just specialize in investments, retirement planning, all across the board.
So if a caregiver is calling to meet with a financial planner, they should specifically say, I'd like to talk to somebody who is familiar with elder issues, or what?
Sure.
Yeah.
And the way that it works in our firm is all of the planners are pretty much what I call a very well-informed generalist. So we have a good idea of, you know, what would happen in different situations, but then there are people who have a specialty. So if you came to me and you said you had someone who had a certain need, I might redirect them to someone else in my firm because they're the best person for it.
One of the saddest things that we hear about is seniors and people with Alzheimer's disease who are scammed, who have this life-saving and then send it to somebody and they're scammed. Do you see that? Have you come across that, where people lose a lot of money from that?
Yeah, it isn't common, but you see it.
Yeah.
You know, you see it with professionals. You see it more with the wrong caregivers sometimes. Sometimes a close family member.
Yep.
And it is sad.
Yeah, it is. And what brought you into this field? What made you want to do this?
Wow, that's a good question. So I originally went to school. I went to St. John's University and was studying to be an accountant. I just decided I was too exciting to do that. So, so I got my 2-year degree in accounting and switched majors to finance. And I just always liked, this working with these types of numbers and helping people. And I did an internship when I was in college working for an investment banking firm. And we were dealing with people over the phone all across the country. And it was amazing how people who never met you would send these large checks to you to make investments. And I just felt I had something more to offer, to connect to people on a face-to-face basis. So I decided to branch out and just do full-service financial planning, where I can meet with people one-on-one, not over the phone. So maybe I won't meet as many people, but the work that I'm going to do, there's going to be more of a quality relationship there. It's funny, I get a lot of referrals from accountants, and often I'll circle back to the accountant and talk to them about the client they referred to me, and they'll say, "How do you know all about this? All this about this client? I know them for 20 years, and I never heard this stuff." And I said, "Hang on a second, think about it. You really only know them for 20 days because you see them one day a year for the last 20 years. We spend a lot of time with people.
Yeah.
And then once we get plans up and running for them, there's a continual review process that we go back and make sure that everything is still on track."
Yeah. So it must be really rewarding
It is.
when you see somebody come to you in a panic and you calm down. We're going to get through this together. We're going to work on this together.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there a particular person that's stuck in your mind throughout the years, or a client that you feel like that you made a difference, or you calmed them down in a tough situation?
I can't think of a particular story, but I'm gifted and rewarded every day. I really am. I'm lucky to do what I do, and I'm lucky enough to work with good people. So there are stories every day.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? I do remember one story. Going back years ago, I had reached out to a client. It wasn't my client, who had a life insurance policy that lapsed. And could have lapsed for many different reasons. He could have had a tough financial time. Maybe he didn't need it anymore. Maybe he didn't like the agent that he had. And I called him up, and he said to me, I wish I could keep that insurance, but I can't because I haven't been working for a while because I have a terrible heart condition, and I'm uninsurable now, and I've got nothing to leave my family. And I said, "Well, when did you become disabled?" And he told me, and he became disabled prior to him. He tried to hold on to that policy and pay the premiums for a while. And he lost that policy well after he became disabled. And we went back to the company, wrote a letter for him, got some medical records. We got the policy reinstated for him, right? So they went back 3 years, reinstated the policy, paid all that back premium. And it actually, the cash value that built up in that policy became his only source of savings from on a go-forward basis.
That's nice.
That was
That's nice.
Literally had tears in his
Yeah.
eyes, and it was very
Yeah.
rewarding. And that happened early on in my career. I was lucky enough to experience that.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for helping families, and thank you for helping caregivers. It's so important, and people don't talk about it enough or wait way too long. So I hope by you being here, that will encourage people to go and find help before it gets to a panic situation. So thank you so much,
My
Anthony,
pleasure.
for being here.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today on Caregivers First, and we'll see you back here next time.